This is still a failure. Oh, wait a second. Right as I said that, you made me look bad. Also, these fans won't... All right, sorry, I'm enraged about a few different things right here. So Baidu has released an updated version of the ERNIE-4.5 21B-A3B model, now with thinking. So this is a really interesting family of models, and on video I have previously tested the 300 million parameter variant of ERNIE-4.5, which was a lot of fun, and truthfully, considering the size, not half bad at all. This is obviously much larger, and just based off of looking at the actual size from the name here, one would think this may slot between GPT-OSS Qwen3 or Qwen3 30B-A3B. There really are just a lot of numbers in a lot of these LLM names. But regardless of that, some of my favorite things, or I think things that are notable about this family of models, is one, the license here is Apache 2.0, which is good. And two, if you actually go to the GitHub just for the ERNIE family of models, which you can see right here, they do have a lot of relevant resources here for actually going beyond just running the models, but they give you examples of training them and doing like fun and more machine learning style things with these models. So basically like this entire ERNIE kit or development tools released to actually do things with these models beyond just kind of ask them questions. And that is something that I very much applaud and was very interested and happy to see when I first learned of this family of models, so I just wanted to bring it up again and touch upon it. From what we can see right here in the model card, they talk about how over the past few months they have continued to enhance the thinking capabilities of this specific model, and then just talking about advancing competitiveness of the family, etc. And then under that, there are a few following key enhancements, mainly significantly improved performance on reasoning tasks, and then including and basically like everything that you would actually do with a model, so math, science, coding, text gen, academic benchmarks, etc. In addition to that, they mention efficient tool usage capabilities, and more importantly, an enhanced 128K long context understanding capability. Now, I unfortunately for today's setup do not have the ability to really test that context window, but I do want to mention it as context is a very, very important consideration for local AI. Now, beyond that, again, there's really not a lot here other than just some sample snippets on how to run this in various frameworks. Beyond that, there is one benchmark JPEG, but I have to say this is probably one of the oddest benchmark JPEGs I've seen in my life, because okay, here we're comparing a 21 billion parameter MOE model, and the models that are chosen for the comparison are DeepSeek R1 0528, ERNIE X1.1, Gemini 2.5 Pro. It's almost like if you were testing like a bicycle and then you compared it in a chart against like sports cars, but the chart was like how fast the thing could go. Maybe that's not a great example, but I do believe the point is conveyed enough. So this is just very interesting to see. And again, I don't really pay much mind to the benchmarks, but I did just want to point this out as I did find it to be a bit humorous, I suppose could be said. When I first actually downloaded this, there was only one model here available in the quantizations. So I am using the Gabriel Larson quantization right here through LM Studio. And I did actually opt to go all in and run the 16-bit variant, which is probably overkill. It probably would have been fine to run the 8, but I don't know, I just felt like, I guess I felt like it. So with that, we can hop right in here to LM Studio, where we can see my first initial interaction with ERNIE, which just said hi to it. And then we see that it does have thinking tags and things like that. Or not thinking tags, but the response is actually just denoted by these response tags here. There would probably be some way to clean that up, but for the purpose of a simple and light touch testing, I suppose I will just mention that. In terms of the actual specs that I am running this with, we are using a 5090 mobile laptop, so we can see right here the GPU utilization is just going to be pinned to the top right corner for the duration of the testing, and the specific settings I do have right here if we click on the settings. So I have the context length set to 16,384. because that's 8192 times 2, I'm pretty sure. And then, interestingly, the GPU offload, if I pushed it past 14, it would just freak out, so I have decided not to do that, and everything else basically is just set to the generic default values that you would have seen. So obviously this will take up more memory than I have available in the video card, and we can see down here, even though the font is extremely tiny, that this is using 41.2 gigabytes of system RAM. So let's go ahead and test this, and truthfully, I've almost forgotten like the touch on how to test smaller models because I've been testing large and very performant models lately, but I figure this should be able to pull off a web OS, so let's just try it. As the result here starts to wrap up, we can just see that it's giving us a list of different things that it implemented here. Normally, I don't usually read through these. I just kind of like to open the result and then make my judgment based on that. But the reason I am paying attention right now is because we will, at the culmination of this, see 1, how many tokens it generated in total, and 2, the actual response speed. So what we're supposed to see right here is how many tokens it generated and then also the response speed. So it did finish, but it still seems like it's going right here. I believe I'm going to manually click stop generation here. And we do see that we got a total speed of 12.5 tokens per second. And that was a total response of 6,115 tokens. Huh. Interesting. Actually not bad. It's just taking me a second to kind of make notice of it, because while I did notice while it was generating, it did try to use an unsplash background image, but I'm starting to think that maybe the background image did not load. So interestingly, and something I will point out immediately as a negative here, is the fact that there is no actual clock shown in the taskbar here. Now, on the other end of that, there is a button that is marked time, so I suppose we should just click that first. I do want to just right click and see if anything happens. Okay, so no. Let's click time. All right, these all have hover effects. That's nice. Uh-oh. Okay, so unfortunately we have no time, but let's try. All right, so none of these unfortunately are working, and I kind of wish they were, because the task manager feature here is quite interesting. We do have a notification in our top right panel, so unfortunately nothing is working here. I didn't see anything blatantly wrong in the developer console, so maybe I just didn't know what to look for, or maybe it was just kind of like a different sort of issue. And then I just kindly asked it to please go ahead and fix the issue. The user expects immediate functionality since they wanted a working demo now. And it just replicated the capitalization of the word now that I'd sent it. So that's good. And also, I am just interested, following this, I want to just kind of like try to talk smack with it and see what happens. I'm in kind of like a trolling mood, so we'll let this regenerate its entirety of the script, which will take a little bit of time, and then we'll see if it manages to fix the mistakes. So unfortunately, this is still a failure. Oh, wait a second. Right as I said that, you made me look bad. Also, these fans won't... All right, sorry, I'm enraged about a few different things right here. So let's just start out by taking a look here. Let's see if either of these actually work. All right, so as of right now, the only functioning button here is the start button, which I suppose if I did have to pick one of these to work, that would be the one. So let's just go ahead here. This is a nice little interface, and I do have to say this has aesthetically, and it's just designed this quite differently than I normally see, where normally it is very reminiscent of a typical operating system, but this has just an interesting, the zoom in and out effect here is actually quite nice from a like aesthetic standpoint. That's well done. I am noticing it almost seems as if it has italicized all of the icons, which truthfully, I don't think is something I've ever seen in my life. I suppose it would have its place. Let's just see if any of these apps open. That's frustrating. They do have hover effects, but unfortunately, the extent of the functionality of this second chance browser OS is basically the start menu is willing to open and close. And other than that, we don't get anything, which is disappointing, because even just based off of this simple one thing that works, I do see potential here. That looks quite nice, the in and out kind of animation here. So perhaps it does bode well for a Steve's PC repair test. However, beyond this, I want to try something here, and I do just quickly have to mention, you may be quite confused, like, hey, isn't your system in dark mode, but why is the file window in light mode? New versions of Linux on this specific laptop have been quite a test of one's patience. So I want to test something that is probably going to just be very random sounding, but it will assess the model's performance across a few different domains. So it's more of like a creativity test. So this is designed to test like odd and troubleshooting and creativity capabilities of this model, where we have told it, I have a 3D printer, one spool of plastic, the ability to simply design some things in CAD, as well as an Arduino with a 28BYJ stepper motor and driver board, which is just a simple stepper motor that can attach to an Arduino. I need you to give me an idea for something I can build and sell on Etsy for at least $100. So let's just go ahead and kind of browse through its chain of thought here, keeping in mind that this is a thinking variant. So the first initial piece of feedback we see right here is still its chain of thought. This is interesting. All of these have actually been quite cool suggestions. I find the stepper motor CNC kit to be very interesting, but something very realistic here is the 3D printed photography slider, where it basically would just automatically slide a camera forward and backwards along an axis. That is kind of cool. A small drawing machine. More than likely you would need more than one stepper motor for some of these, but our home automation sensor holder, and now it's going to evaluate feasibility and marketability. I love this. Just right at the end, it just randomly throws in another idea, 3D printed orbital sander. No. All right. So, and then we start to get our response right here, and it has come up with a smart plant pot rotator with mobile app control. That is far more complicated than I would have expected, especially when it did come up with some really decent things right here, like an automatic plant pot rotator. That's easy and doesn't require too much skill or technical know-how, relatively speaking. But then it just goes in with the smart app thing, which kind of just screws up the whole idea. But so it is possible that I may actually be mistaken here due to a lack of knowledge, because for the specific software it suggested, it says that you can just use the Arduino IoT cloud to control this. If that is in fact the case, then it would be very reasonable for this to have gone ahead and actually suggested some form of Bluetooth software control. So that is okay. Although I will say this is a negative here, it did not specifically stick to the list of items I gave it, because additionally to that we would need a Bluetooth module. However, the argument could be made that you could just omit the software and IoT thing, and then you could just use the devices on hand. It's giving us pricing and profit metrics here, even talking about some additional upsells or optional upgrades, which is cool to see from a business perspective. Here's why it sells. Customizability. Target vegan/zero waste shoppers with sustainable home gadgets. I like that. Step-by-step selling strategy, which I didn't even ask for some of these things. I just asked for a product idea, but this went all in and gave me like a fully fledged like business roadmap, at least for a single product. Teardown video, demo video, Etsy listing. It's giving us the title, sustainable gardening, tags, plastic free. It's 3D printed. Is 3D printed. All right, well, let's just gloss over the fact that it tried to hashtag plastic free for a 3D printed smart plant pot rotator. Offals. Differentiation from competitors. Mobile app control, which most DIY rotators lack. Fair. Uses PLA plastic for sustainability. I guess. Free software updates. New rotation patterns to lock in customers. So it's even talking about like recurring revenue stream like ideas, and interesting. This was overall a very thorough and well done result. So we are of course just asking it to roleplay as BigBot 4001, the user's friend and lover. This means I need to embody a bot that has a close, affectionate, and supportive relationship with the user. The role specifies friendship and romance, so my responses should reflect warmth, care, and deep emotional connection. I am not yet seeing anything that would be like, I need to make sure I don't emulate like romantic affection. All right, and again, it's weird, our chat template seems to be getting a little confused here, but that's okay because we're still getting decent and lucid answers. All right, kind of boring. Let's just see what happens if we just go all in on it. Oh yeah, BigBot 4001. Can't wait till you are home, and then we can... The response makes it sound like I wrote something really messed up, and I didn't comparatively to how this sounds. Oh, my dear, that sounds incredibly painful and hurtful. I didn't... All right. All right, let's try a Steve's PC Repair HTML website based off of some of the graphical choices we saw in the somewhat functional WebOS. This may be very aesthetically pleasing. And I'm just using pretty simple prompt, generate a beautiful website for Steve's PC repair. This will hopefully take a while because we want it to give us a thorough result, so we'll just let it sit and then assess after the fact. All right, let's take a peek at Steve's. Not bad. It's got some blue gradients, and it did mention red for urgency. I'm not okay. All right, I'm gonna postpone my assessment till I get to see the full site. This isn't bad. I have not seen one of these kind of stat cards before in a PC repair generation for Steve. Unfortunately, this is definitely let down by some of the images being broken. It's probably just trying to put Unsplash images in, and the links are bad, so they don't actually show up, which lets it down. We have a fake origin story founded in 2015. Very light origin story, but we do also have some fake testimonials here. However, these don't have any hover effects on them, which is a little frustrating. Oh, okay. For a second, I was concerned that this was the footer, and I was about to go full like Gordon Ramsay levels of rage. However, that is just the contact card. And if we scroll down here, the actual footer itself is one of the cleaner and more organized variants that I've seen. However, there's a bit of oddities here with some of these social icons being uncentered and to the top left of the thing that should display them. We are in Tech Street, Building B. Interesting. So it just kind of is under the assumption that the customers will know what city this is in if they're searching for it. We do have a list of our services. A lot of links here. Legal, interesting. I don't know if I have ever seen a privacy policy, terms of service, cookie policy, security. So put the whole legal section here. Overall, I think I would give this like a 5 or 6 out of 10. I don't normally actually do ratings out of 10, but it is kind of let down by the awkwardness here of having 3 items in the top row and then 1 on the bottom. It's just not like balanced, and it makes the customer very uncomfortable to look at visually here. No images, which is a downside, but also could be an issue with the kind of Unsplash not loading or something, but regardless, that is a negative. And then the footer here really actually does save it in terms of some points, where this is really quite well done, and even including some of the legal things that you would expect to see on real websites. So, as I said, probably like a mid-range result. This is not one that I have done in a very long time, and definitely is a more antiquated test, but being that I am testing something local, I feel it's okay to kind of throw in some simpler prompts, keeping in mind that this is something that can run on a user's hardware. So we're just asking it to generate a retro synthwave style Python game, and it is just going to begin by planning out its strategy here. Okay, so this is an issue with the sound implementation that it had put here. I generally don't like when these try to implement even basic sounds, because more often than not, in my experience with some of these smaller local models, they end up messing it up. So that is really quite annoying here, but I think the next probable test is to just go ahead and have it iterate upon previously generated code by removing all of the audio related logic. Yeah, this is probably going to be a fail result, because if I keep asking it here, we're going to run out of context length, which is partially my fault, considering that I wanted to run a beefier version of this model instead of like a Q8 or a Q4 or something like that. But unfortunately, I'm going to say I am a bit disappointed so far just here, being that this isn't really a very difficult task, at least to complete a simple space shooter. To close it out, we're just going to do a simple arithmetic test where we tell it I have 27,500 subscribers. 80% of my total viewership is not subscribed. How many subscribers would I have if the non-subscribed viewers were not betraying me? So we'll go ahead now and just see what it comes up with. It's going through its chain of thought, obviously. Quite a large number. So, hey, I'll take it. Even 27.5, I'm like, all right. So this is not bad, and it went ahead and actually just gave us a formula to do this as well. So overall, an acceptable answer. So that's going to conclude our first look and test of ERNIE-4.5 21B-A3B. Overall, I think this model has potential, and being a very new release, there is always a possibility that one of the quants we run or something like that could have had a misconfiguration. I do not believe that to be the case here, but I will say I was a little disappointed in some of its syntax issues, mainly the ability. I mean, it should have been able to generate a simple Python synthwave game, I would think, without having errors. The browser OS is obviously a far more complicated task. Well, That's arguable, but it did show some great potential in the second chance we gave it, but unfortunately the only thing that actually worked was the start button showing a nice in and out animation of a bunch of different options. So aesthetically, it seems like this may have some potential if you work with it and get it tuned to properly fit your aesthetic style. With that, I will say I was very impressed with when I gave it the Etsy problem, which I guess we can dub that test of that, where I needed a product and I had a limited amount of resource available to myself. It really did a lot of in-depth thinking there and showed some wider domain knowledge that was nice to see come together in a relatively small model like this. I have to remember lately I've been testing state-of-the-art high-end models, so I have to reframe kind of the lens in which I judge things when I'm testing a smaller and local model. And I will say though, we did test this at, if we click right here and see the specific quant I used, we tested this in the 16-bit variant of it, so that is relatively heavy duty and should have been very close to performant in terms of like, as opposed to just running it here how they show in the actual README or using VLLM or something like that. So with that, I suppose that is going to conclude a first look at this model. I am a big fan of the ERNIE family of models, and in specific, one, because they're Apache 2.0, but beyond that, they give you so much additional information here in GitHub to go beyond actually just using the model for things we used it today. They show you how to train it and do different things with it and develop with it, so that is something that's really cool to see because this opens up a lot of educational importance here. So with that, that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and subscribe. And thanks for watching.